Alright, hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Delta Penguin from Peng Tech. Name subject to change, just temporary for now. So let me think. Yes, this video is about conditional logic. So if you think about our program, right? Our program so far has been such that we write commands and they're executed sequentially, right? Kind of like a waterfall style, like the water comes down from the top and it just hits every command line by line. But in the last video we defined objects and said, hey, what are they? How are they used? So that we can pass in more complex data. But from there, it's like, okay, we have a program, say, of registering people for their driver's license. But how do you, first you have to define what the program does. So in this case, we'll register for them for the driver's license. But how do you determine who qualifies and who doesn't? How can you do that if like the program just always runs the code in a straight line, just command after command sequentially? How do you accept some people and then reject others? And that's what conditional logic's about. So let's get to it. Let's go to the screen. Okay, so here's again JSON objects. There's two of them here in this example. 1, 2, and it's in an array. You can see the the square brackets. So from here, let's say we have some code. So okay, we load data in. Let's say load data, and then we'll run some code like register user for new or renewed driver's license. Okay, so it runs that, but what's the problem here? So loads data, so let's pretend it does some code, and then eventually gets to this point. So what's the problem? The problem is, you need to be able to filter. Okay, we'll pretend it's a function. Load data. User equals let user equal load data. So, and then it's a function, and we're going to pass. This might be confusing. Okay, so let user, and then function main. Oh, this is JSON, so it doesn't like the coloring. Okay, that's fine. So I could probably, give me a second, I'll split it out. Why not? And it might be a little nicer. Maybe a little confusing, but here's the JSON here, okay? And then I split it up, so now come on, buddy. Code on the right side, JSON on the left. So here's a new main function, and then this time we're going to, okay, hopefully I don't need this later. New main function, we're gonna load data, and so define the function so it stops giving us red lines, although this is still giving us red lines. Oh, okay. User name. If you don't fully understand what's going on, that's okay. It'll make more sense in the future, probably. Let's say, okay. Delta Peng user. Okay, so pretend it does more than this, but okay, we call some function that does some stuff and loads data, and then returns, say, the Delta Peng user, something like that. And then I put whatever user is loaded in, whether it's Delta Peng or Beta Gwen, and it registers them for renewal. Okay, so let's say for me that's fine because I'm 20 years old, say, in this example. But what would happen if my younger sister, Beta Gwen, if she tries to register for her driver's license and she's only 14? The problem there should be obvious. No, I'm just kidding. But it should be, the problem there is she's underage, and depending on whatever country or law you're in. But the problem is she shouldn't be. Not everyone should get registered for a new driver's license, right? Just because you're here, just because you run the function, you want to be able to filter out people like, okay, probably age is a factor. So how do we prevent her from doing that, but allow me to do that in the same program? The way we do that is through conditional logic. And so here's what we can do. We can do something like this. It's called, like, say, a condition. So if, and again, we mentioned age is probably a factor. So let's say if, actually, wait a minute. Okay. Load data. I'm going to even just, I have the data here. So let me just, instead of, I'm actually going to return the object here. So I'm returning a JSON object. Somehow it does some magic. It picks this user, not this one, and it gives it to this user here. So now this user's my delta-pen object. So now I'm gonna say something like, okay, and this is no longer just a string. I'm gonna say it's any type because it's an object. Okay, so I'm gonna say if user dot, and look at this. Now that it's an object, it knows all the different properties that are on it. So I'm going to say age. If user.age, and that's how you reference this, because user right now has this object here. So the way that I reference this value is I go, user, the object, dot, whatever the value or the parameter is. So user.age, this gives me 20. So if this age is less than, let's say 16, because less than or equal to 16, because 16 can be like, the time where you get your trainer's permit, right? So that should be fine. Actually, we should change that. So they need to be, if everything in this parentheses is true, that's when the code under it will execute. If it's not true, it's going to skip it. Okay? So basically, it's saying, hey, you got to be 16 years or older, and if you are, then okay. So that's great, right? So that makes it so we can get a set of data, whether it's 2 items, whether it's 100 items, whatever, and you can run the same program, and anyone under the age of 16 won't be able to get their license. So that's perfect. That's what we want. But what if there's some other factors, like, okay, well, maybe penguins mature faster than humans, and actually 14 is an acceptable age for penguins to get their first driver's license. So if that's the case, or what if the state of Alaska doesn't care what age you are, and you can get a license regardless. So if that's the case, then we could allow that. Then we'd have to change the code logic, right? Because otherwise, even though my sister's from Alaska and now she should be getting her license, this code is going to prevent her from doing it because we're only checking on age, and her age doesn't match that criteria. So in order to counter this, we need to do something else. If it's like, okay, penguins are different, then you'd have to have some other factor, like, okay, species, penguin, and then something like that. And then you'd have to change this data would have to be given to us, some new data would have to be given to us, and then we'd have to say something like, okay, user age greater than 16 and your user.species. Okay, it doesn't recognize it because I added it here, but I didn't add it to the code that's actually being loaded right now. So let me add it here. Okay, so now that went away. So if the species is equal to, so double equal signs means equal to when you're doing conditions. If it's exclamation mark equal, that means not equal to. On JavaScript, sometimes you'll see an extra equal sign. That means the type has to match also. So, but for now, we can just do double. That's fine. So if species, okay, so it's either this condition, it's either you got to be 16 or older if you're a human, right? Let me just copy this all over since we're repeating a lot of it. Okay, and I'm going to make another parentheses here, parentheses within parentheses. That, or if age doesn't matter if you're a penguin. So let's say if your species a penguin, so you can register if either you're 16 years or older and you're a human, or if you're a penguin. If you're a penguin, so if either of these conditions are true because I use the or, then you can register. So that's fine. So now it works. Now it prevents the underage humans from being able to register inappropriately, but it also accounts for our penguin exception. Well, but what if new data came in and we had misdemeanors? And for some reason, I have 100, a perfect score of 100. Like, is that a factor? Like, according to applicable laws or common sense, is that a factor in terms of whether or not we should allow the person to get their driver's license? If it is a factor, then we might have to add that condition here somewhere so that Delta Penguin or I don't accidentally, I don't get a license when maybe I'm at risk maybe I'm a risk to society and to myself if I did get it. So there's a lot of, different things that you could account for or that you can include, and it's up to you. It's your program. You get to decide which aspects of it you think are valuable and should be accounted for based on the situation and whatever you're trying to do with your program, right? So that's the gist of conditional logic and how you can use it to further make your program more complex and useful to a wider audience.